Hi, I'm Jessica, and this is Check Your Connections. Last time, PJ took us to meet some people who shared some deeply moving stories about overcoming challenges. Today, we are super lucky to have a chance to talk with someone who knows a lot about surviving challenges, none other than world-famous Canadian Survivorman.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. You're giving us some of your time, so I really, really appreciate it and want to thank you in advance for that.
Well, a big part of it is you guys are Canadian, and I'm not in Canada right now, and I really miss it. So I think it was like, oh, I can talk to some Canadians.
I guess the analogy I was looking at was this isolation thing, and how it's kind of a dangerous tool. And watching your videos, fire is such an essential tool. Work with me here. So this is basically what I see is isolation is a lot like fire. It's got a lot of practical uses if used carefully, but it can be so destructive if left unchecked. I guess in your time out there in the wilderness, do you feel that isolation really was something you sought out or really hated when you were out there?
No, it's both. It's absolutely both. You're right. It is very much a double-edged sword. It is very useful. And dangerous is not that's not hyperbole. It can be a dangerous thing. It can also be incredibly cathartic. I've had, I guess, thousands and thousands of hours in isolation, self-imposed isolation, if you will. The first part of isolation can be refreshing because I would go, oh, thanks. Now I can start to think things through. Maybe that's the next key here, because now we have to look at how do we go from the refreshness, that's a word, the refreshing nature of being isolated for a moment or three to the potential dangerous zone. There were times, I'll just say it. I mean, there were times in Survivorman and filming those series where the isolation became gripping and gripping in a bad sense. It would hold me down. I would absolutely break down and cry and even sob. And especially if the isolation was exacerbating other underlying issues. You have to be willing to pivot. The strength is in going, and wiping your eyes and getting up and breathing and going, okay, now that's done. I've got my cry out, got my emotions out and leveled, and I've done no one harm, and I've not done myself harm, and the drywall's still intact. There for me is, I think, the key moment, the moment as to whether or not we're going to pivot or just continue to wallow in it. I could feel very, very sorry for myself, but instead my pivot was to say, okay, what's my focus? What can I do? That's the moment where you can say, no, there's ways. What are the ways? So right now, if I think more globally, forgive me for meandering, but I had a coffee and I haven't talked to anybody in a long time, and you're the only people I have. Help me. I've had, even in this pandemic, I've had moments of like, because I'm kind of stuck at home. And that's the thing is, that moment where you say, no, I'm going to pivot here. Yes, this sucks. Huge. Even if it's a personal thing. So never mind if it's just the pandemic. But there's two slices here. There's the worldwide thing for that. You can't be, self-sympathetic about it. We're all in it. You're not the only one dealing with the pandemic, man. We all are. So there's that. But you are the only one dealing with the crap you got to deal with. So yeah, that is yours. So there's always these two towers here, right? There's two channels of what we have to deal with. In both circumstances, you got to pivot. And the pivot is that moment where you go, okay, I can't do this. In fact, I can't even do these 5 things. In fact, I can't even do these 5 things anymore. What can I do? Where can I go? What's my pivot here? So you see, I'm walking through stages. And I think that's what we're doing with this pandemic. We're seeing stages. At least we should be. We should be alert enough to recognize what's going on here and pay attention. If we don't pay attention and we don't try to recognize the stages of isolation, the stages of grief and anger and joy and even community, when that gets to happen again. If we don't recognize that, then we're just being led along. We're in the river and we're scrambling. We're trying to swim to shore. We're trying to swim upstream, and that's not going to work. So fine, all you 21-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 33-year-olds. Yeah, there's nothing about this. Nothing about this. It doesn't suck. Nothing. But we pivot. We say, okay, I'm going to still own my moment. I'm still going to make this work for me. And that is the thing. And so all the way back to that shore in Alaska and all the way back to Survivorman and my moment of isolation is, where's my pivot in all of that? The pivot is in the focus. Then it's picking that goal, picking that focus. That goal, that focus is the shining, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's the prize you're reaching for. It's the dream you're trying to achieve, you know, make a dream of gold. And so once we have that, well, pardon me, but pandemic be damned, you know, crappy neighborhood to be raised in, be damned. Alcoholic father, be damned. You know, my background, getting beat up at high school, be damned. All those things, I got a goal. Well, you're going to fade away sooner or later. You're going to back away. I'm just going to keep going. You know, eventually you will desire. You're hard right now. I'm in grade 9. I'm getting beat up. I got beat up a lot in grade 9. Well, I got to figure out those ways. That's why I became funny, because bullies, when you make a bully laugh, they stop beating you up.
Thoughts and feelings can be so hard to deal with sometimes. Do you have any advice from everything you've been through on how people can help manage these?
Oh, there, now I can focus my thoughts and feelings. My hesitancy is because no matter how old you are, you don't really truly ever get a handle on complete control of your thoughts and feelings. It's the input that you put into your brain that comes out in thoughts, comes out in your dreams, even when you sleep, right? And if we're taking in toxic, negative perspectives on purpose, I say on purpose, right? If we're taking that in all the time, if we're constantly only reading dark, negative books and watching dark, negative films and seeking out dark, negative things on YouTube, it's really impossible not to become dark and negative. And so this is why I escape to nature a lot. It's impossible to take in anything negative from nature. It's impossible. It's impossible. I will say that flat out. And when I say nature, I mean this tree 5 feet from me and these birds all around me right now. I don't mean you have to go to Peru, that kind of nature. I mean just right outside most of the windows I see in the background there. So the moral of that story is feed our thoughts with the positive things. And that goes back to our pivoting. It goes back to our goals and our focus, because that's positive. Places we want to go, stuff we want to get to, things we want to do, have. Those are positive things. And the more we focus on those, the more they swim around in our brain. They crowd out the dark and the negativity.
We have 2 air cadets here. I believe both of them have experience with survival weekends, and taught survival skills. So they're here to join us, and I think they have a question for you too.
All right. So, like I went to a basic survival camp in, like Cold Lake, Alberta there. And I was struggling with the duo portion, and like, it's the whole fact of being alone for me that like really hit me. So my question is, how have you kept like such a good mental state, and like what's your biggest inspiration of everything?
For when I'm alone, it goes back to my commentary on focus, a task. You've got to have a task, something to do. The worst thing is to just sit by a tree. So it's not the worst thing if you're trying to, if your task is meditating or listening to the birds or taking in all the sounds. But if you are at the moment lonely and dealing with the aloneness, tasks, give yourself something to do. That's how I dealt with it. I didn't deal with it by thinking anything or feeling anything. I've dealt with it by doing something. In my case, it meant setting up a camera on a tripod and filming myself do something. So I was lucky. I had that outlet of filming myself. when I was alone. But there are many other tasks when you're completely alone. My worst days here during the pandemic are sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now and forgetting to give myself a task, forgetting to give myself something to do. And the inspiration related to that task goes back to what I was just saying about your goals in life. Now, you might not be in a place where you can act upon those goals, so your tasks might become a little more pragmatic, like, I need to build a roof on this shelter because it's going to rain. So that's in the moment, pragmatism. But if it's a larger than life situation, like here, and I will just find a task. I also will find a task that is distracting. If I get stuck here in this house, right now I'm editing a film and editing some music and editing a podcast, lots of creative stuff. And then I hit walls. When I hit that wall, I go out and I walk my dogs in nature. So I go out and I use nature to shake it up. If you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself and frustrated with the aloneness and not sure what to do and you don't have a task, get up and move to a different chair. Even that can do it. I've moved 4 times in this conversation while doing this. And I'll do that today. I'll work at the kitchen table, then I'll work on the couch, then I'll work in my office, and I'll work downstairs. That movement shakes up the blood. And then I think of a task. And then I'm no longer alone. Or feeling lonely anyway.
Do you have your question?
Sure. Me, as also being a cadet, I also went to the same camp as Sergeant Thibault, going to Cold Lake. For me, with duos, it was going from the like all the chatter and like being with my friends, like my mates, going from such a loud and crowded group, like talking about all the stories and what we should be thinking of. It was from going from that to the complete silence of getting out to my camp and kind of like getting into the wilderness and like feeling the nature around me. My question is, how did you, if you ever felt negative feelings, how did you overcome those feelings in trying to like get through the isolation?
If we do nothing other than eat, drink, light up a cigarette, light up a joint, stare into the abyss. If we do nothing but these simple, super easy, within reach things, and then it's very difficult to overcome. But the minute you have a task, and like I said, sometimes the way to figure out what it is you want to do sometimes can happen just by, if you're out in the wilderness, get up and sit by a different tree. Go down and stand by the river. Go up to the top of that hill. It's all it takes. All it takes. I can close by going where we all are, this pandemic. So in this pandemic, I'm married to an American woman, but I'm Canadian, and I have a place in Canada and the United States. And I go back and forth between the two. I used to, with ease. Now the pandemic's messed all of that up. So I'm here longer than I normally would be. My wife is a doctor and she's on call quite a lot. Sure, I've got my dogs and my cat here. Even with all of my distractions, I can have moments of getting lonely in this place where I am. And I have my music and my guitars and stuff like that. And I have a job I got to do. So sometimes all it takes to shake that is to walk the dogs. Sometimes that's all it takes, to walk the dogs for 15 minutes. Walk out in the yard. Sitting still is dangerous. Get up and move, and something will come to you.
That is great advice. And we have just gobbled up everything you had to say because it was just so on the money. And I want to just thank you and really share our appreciation for you sharing your time with us.
I'm going to go walk my dogs.
Awesome. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.